So today, in the usually impenetrable world of American mortgages, a couple of things we think people should pay more attention to. Citigroup has actually admitted defrauding the US government, and Bank of America has settled similar charges but slightly buried that deal in a much bigger one. Agnes, tell us what's going on here.
The key takeaway here is that these banks have defrauded the government, and it's essentially this is an insurance scheme in which they give the government mortgages that are pretty shoddy. Government backs them, so if they go bad, the taxpayer's on the hook. Bank of America settled for $1 billion, except it was part of the big $25 billion robo.
Right, it was kind of hit the last paragraph of the press release,
exactly.
right?
Last paragraph of the press release. There was never anything
and we don't
filed.
know the details.
We don't know the details on it. Citigroup, this week comes out and they've settled for $158 million. Very similar charges. Essentially, the drive for profits was like steamrolling any kind of quality control, and the U.S. government ended up, with a lot of losses.
Agnes, it's interesting that there are no criminal charges here. I mean, these sound like big figures, but to these big banks, they really don't mean much and tend to be not very effective.
Well, but that's the oddity, right? Because with say, other kinds of fraud charges, or when the government goes after individuals, usually if there's a civil charge, then maybe there's a criminal charge not far behind, especially if you admit it, which is unusual.
Well, that's the key here. They've admitted fraud. Citigroup makes no bones about it that they've done something wrong. Interesting, they say, hey, we had a hole in our systems. Well, this was not just a hole in Citigroup's system. It happened to B of A. Deutsche Bank is under scrutiny. I'm told a lot of the big banks will get similar actions taken against them. I mean, this was standard practice.
Exactly.
Now, what's going to stop that if it's not going to be criminal? If it's not going to be, if somebody doesn't go to prison, the money ain't.
I guess we don't know yet whether there might be criminal charges.
I mean, as we keep hearing from lawyers, it's incredibly difficult to prosecute, particularly high-level executives when it's all going on in the back office.
But you have an idea here, I guess. I mean, these are just numbers. These are big banks. Sure, $1 billion is a lot for Bank of America when profits are not so fantastic. But it's just a bit of money which the shareholders ultimately end.
I mean, one thing, for me that just stands out, if you defraud the U.S. government, you should be banned from doing business with the U.S. government. I mean, essentially, these insurance, at least for a while. I mean, these insurance programs are based on trust that the banks are going to follow guidelines, basic guidelines. If you break the trust, there should be at least some kind of...
And this happens in other industries. It happens in the pharmaceutical industry. If you misrepresent a judge, you market a drug, and you market it in a way it's not approved for, you're banned from the Medicare and other federal programs for providing drugs. And that scares people.
Exactly.
This is the similar kind of thing.
And again, I think you hit it. It scares people, and it scares people particularly about housing right now. And this is one of the reasons that I think
so in
it's
other words, the
difficult
government may be thinking we can't go too hard on these banks because it'll affect the mortgage market even more and all the rest.
Exactly.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Looks like these banks are getting off a little easy right now, even though the numbers are big. We'll be keeping an eye on those stories and more at Breakingviews next week.